When you walk through life with your eyes even slightly open, you will notice that every human being carries an unseen world within themselves, a world far more complex than anything they reveal on the surface. When a person becomes spiritually awakened, this inner world becomes not only visible to them, but intensely alive, vibrant, and profoundly sensitive. Yet sensitivity, though it is a tremendous possibility, becomes a great vulnerability when placed into unprepared hands. This is why spiritually awakened people should never open themselves to just anyone. Not because they must hide, not because they should be secretive, but because the depth of their experience is not something every ear can hold or every heart can absorb. If you throw open the doors of your inner sanctuary to those who have not yet learned to sit still within their own, they will not understand what they are seeing, and what people cannot understand, they often fear, dismiss, or distort. When awakening happens, even in the smallest measure, you begin to sense life in ways others do not. You perceive subtleties of emotion before they form into words. You feel the texture of someone's intention, even when their mouth is saying something else. You touch a dimension of existence that is not dependent on the noise of the mind or the drama of human compulsions. This is not a small shift. It is a fundamental rewiring of perception. But when you try to express such experiences to someone who is still trapped in the rigid boxes of their own psychological structures, they may look at you with confusion or suspicion. And if you try too hard to make them understand, you may find yourself shrinking your experience just to fit their limitations. Many people do this unknowingly. They dim the clarity of their inner vision so that others can feel comfortable around them. They water down their insights because the world around them is not ready to drink something stronger. They compromise their truth, not out of fear, but out of habit. This is how many awakened beings lose their depth long before it blossoms into its full possibility. I'm not saying you must isolate yourself or become distant. Life is to be shared. But you must know the difference between sharing and spilling. Sharing happens when there is receptivity, when the soil is fertile. Spilling happens when the vessel is overturned in the presence of those who cannot hold anything. When you speak from the core of your being to someone who is not ready, you are not only wasting your breath, you are exposing the most delicate parts of yourself to the friction of misunderstanding. This is like placing a tender flower in the middle of a busy road. Not because the road is bad, but because it is simply not the place for a flower to survive. And this is where discernment becomes essential. Awakening without discernment is like walking barefoot through a forest at night. You may feel everything intensely, but without clarity, you may step on thorns you could have avoided. One of the first realizations in spiritual growth is that most people speak from their wounds, not their wisdom. Their reactions come not from awareness, but from patterns they have carried for years. When you reveal your inner experiences to such people, they will interpret your words through the lens of their own psychological distortions. They will not hear what you are saying, they will hear what their mind is projecting. You may be offering clarity, but they may perceive it as confrontation. You may be sharing insight, but they may interpret it as arrogance. You may be speaking truth, but they may feel threatened simply because truth often shakes the foundations upon which their identities stand. When someone is deeply invested in their illusions, even your silence can feel like an attack, let alone your honesty. A spiritually awakened person sees life with a certain transparency, but if you offer this transparency to someone who is still tangled in their own shadows, they may feel exposed. Not because you judged them, but because your clarity naturally illuminates things they have long avoided. And people do not always appreciate the mirror that reveals what they are not yet ready to confront. If you speak openly about your awareness or your perceptions, some will admire you, some will resent you, and some will try to pull you back into the familiar patterns they understand, not out of malice, but out of fear of the unknown. This is why it is essential that your inner growth remains rooted in your own experience, not in the approval or understanding of others. A tree does not ask permission from the shrubs around it before reaching for the sky. It simply grows. If you truly wish to share your inner life, do not look for many, look for the few who have eyes to see and ears to hear. It is not about superiority. It is about compatibility of vision. Two people can live under the same roof, share the same air, and still inhabit entirely different dimensions of understanding. Awakening is not a status. It is a sensitivity. It is the ability to feel life without the filters that most people rely on to protect themselves from reality. When you try to express this to someone who still clings to those filters, they may feel uncomfortable, even irritated. Some may ridicule what they cannot grasp. Some may try to fix what is not broken. Some may offer advice from a place of confusion, thinking they are helping you when they are only projecting their fears. If you allow their confusion to influence your clarity, you will find yourself drifting away from your inner truth. Many awakened people make the mistake of believing that openness means vulnerability. But openness without discretion is not spiritual. It is simply naive. True openness is like a river, fluid, alive, and aware of its own boundaries. It knows when to flow freely and when to carve a deeper channel. If you want to protect your inner space, you must first recognize its value. People lock their houses at night not because they are afraid, but because what is inside matters to them. In the same way, when your inner experience becomes rich, subtle, and sacred, you cannot leave its doors open to every passing thought or every curious voice. Not everyone who knocks should enter. Some come with genuine seeking, others come with noise. If you allow noise into your inner space, you will lose the silence that made awakening possible in the first place. If life has opened a certain dimension within you, do not rush to display it. Let it mature. Let it deepen. Let it become a natural breath within you. When the right moment comes, your presence itself will speak louder than your words ever can. Until then, hold your experience gently, like a flame that must be protected from the wind. Over time, that flame will become a fire that needs no protection because it can light the path for others without losing itself. And if you truly feel that these words resonate with something inside you, allow that recognition to deepen. You may discover that your own experience is more important than the opinions that surround you. And perhaps you may even reflect on how this understanding applies to your own relationships. When you grow in this way, you do not have to announce anything to anyone. Your clarity becomes your introduction, your balance becomes your language, your presence becomes your offering. But until your roots are strong, until the inner soil is stable, you must guard this space within you with care. You are not hiding, you are cultivating. You are nurturing something that is still tender, something that has not yet reached the strength to withstand the storms of other people's opinions, fears, or projections. When a seed is planted, you do not expose it to the wind and sun before it has even sprouted. You keep it covered, protected, nourished. Only when it becomes a sapling do you allow the world to see it. And even then, you shield it from unnecessary disturbance. This is not secrecy, it is wisdom. Sometimes people believe that sharing everything with everyone is a sign of honesty or purity, but honesty is not the same as indiscriminate disclosure. If you open your inner world to someone who has not yet learned to manage their own, you may find them placing their confusion into your space. You may find them forming judgments based on their limitations, not your reality. Over time, you may even find yourself adapting your spiritual experience to fit their expectations, just to maintain harmony. This is one of the most dangerous things an awakened being can do. The moment you begin diluting your truth to keep others comfortable, you are no longer walking your own path. You are walking the path of their fears. And a path built upon fear can never lead you to freedom. When your awareness grows, your need for external validation naturally diminishes. But if you expose your inner life to those who rely heavily on validation, they may pull you back into that same dependency. They may remind you of old patterns you thought you had left behind. They may unknowingly try to keep you at the level where they feel safe. Understand this clearly. People rarely resist your growth because they dislike you. They resist it because your growth challenges the identity they have formed around you. If you change, they must change the way they relate to you. And many are not ready for that. So they may minimize your experience, question your insights, or subtly discourage you. Not out of ill intention, but because your evolution threatens the stability of the psychological structures they depend on. A spiritually awakened person must develop the strength to stand alone, not in isolation, but in independence. If your clarity depends on the approval of the confused, it is not clarity. If your peace depends on the reactions of the restless, it is not peace. If your inner freedom depends on the acceptance of those still living in bondage, it is not freedom. This is why great beings throughout history have often walked with very few, not because they did not wish to share, but because only a few were ready to receive. When you understand this, you stop expecting the world to understand your inner journey, and you begin honoring the journey itself. And sometimes honoring your journey means keeping silent, not because you fear being misunderstood, but because you have no need to be understood. There is a beauty in silence that most people have never tasted. When you keep your inner experience unspoken, it grows in a different way. It becomes dense, powerful, self-sustaining. It stops seeking expression and starts becoming expression. Your very breath becomes a teaching. Your stillness becomes communication. Your presence becomes guidance. But for this to happen, you must resist the temptation to display your spiritual moments like trophies. Do not speak simply because you feel something profound. Let the experience shape you before you shape words around it. Words spoken too early can trap the experience instead of expanding it. Many people lose their depth because they speak too soon and too often about things that are still unfolding within them. If you truly want to grow, you must learn to be invisible sometimes. Not invisible in the sense of disappearing from life, but invisible in the sense of not needing to announce your inner movements. Real strength does not need spectators. Real transformation does not need applause. The deepest shifts happen quietly, in the privacy of your own being. When you open your heart prematurely to those who are unprepared, you expose a process that should remain inward until it stabilizes. And if someone mishandles that exposure, it can shake your confidence and delay your growth. Protecting your inner world is not selfishness, it is self-respect. It is recognizing that your awareness is precious, that your insights are delicate, and that your transformation is sacred. If life has granted you even a glimpse beyond the usual boundaries of perception, honor that gift by holding it close until it becomes strong enough to stand without explanation. And when the time comes to share, do so with those who show sincerity, humility, and a willingness to look within themselves. Not everyone deserves access to your inner space. Not everyone has earned the privilege of hearing your truth. Not everyone has cultivated the sensitivity needed to understand the language of your experience. When you recognize this, you do not become closed. You become wise. Wisdom is not in speaking. It is in knowing when to speak, how to speak, and to whom. As you walk through life with a deeper awareness, your responsibility grows. Your clarity can illuminate the path for others, but only if you learn to protect it from unnecessary disturbances. Your peace can become a refuge for many, but only if you guard it from those who mistake vulnerability for weakness. Your inner freedom can inspire countless seekers, but only if you allow it to mature without interference. If these words resonate with you, perhaps reflect on your own life and notice where you have opened yourself to those who were not ready. Notice where you have diluted your truth to fit into someone else's comfort. Notice where you have compromised your awareness for the sake of acceptance. Awareness begins with noticing. When you begin to notice these things, something subtle shifts within you. You stop blaming others for not understanding, and instead you begin to see the simple mechanics of human perception. Each person listens through the filter of their own experience, and most have not yet cleaned the dust from that lens. If you offer them something too pure, too subtle, too unfiltered, they may not recognize its value. It's like giving a diamond to someone who has only known stones. They may throw it away, not because they are foolish, but because they cannot yet perceive the difference. In the same way, your spiritual insights, your moments of profound clarity, your experiences of stillness, these are diamonds of consciousness. They cannot be handed out casually. They must be offered only when there is a real possibility of being received with the reverence they deserve. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do is to keep your inner world to yourself. Because if you reveal it to someone who is not ready, they may misunderstand themselves more than they misunderstand you. They may project their insecurities onto your words. They may see your awareness as aloofness, your stillness as indifference, your clarity as judgment. And once such misunderstandings take root, they rarely disappear on their own. They grow like weeds in the mind, twisting the relationship into something complicated and heavy. A spiritually awakened person must avoid sowing seeds in infertile soil, not because they judge the soil, but because they understand the nature of seeds. As your awareness deepens, you may also realize that your energy becomes more perceptible to others. People may feel drawn to you without knowing why. Some may come seeking guidance. Others may come seeking comfort, but not all who approach you come with sincerity. Some come out of curiosity, some out of boredom, and some out of the unconscious desire to pull you into their emotional drama. If you open yourself indiscriminately, you may find your clarity becoming entangled in their confusion. This is why boundaries become essential on the spiritual path. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They allow what nourishes you to enter and keep out what depletes you. Without such filters, even the purest awareness can become overwhelmed by the noise of the world. You must learn to recognize the difference between a genuine seeker and a casual spectator. A seeker listens with their whole being. They ask questions not to challenge you, but to understand themselves. They are willing to look at their own shadows. A spectator listens only with the surface of their mind. They ask questions to entertain their intellect, not to transform their life. If you share your deepest experiences with spectators, you will exhaust yourself. If you share them with seekers, you will grow. This discernment is not judgment, it is intelligence. It is the intelligence of knowing where to invest your inner wealth. Just as you would not pour fresh water into a broken vessel, you should not pour your awareness into minds that cannot yet hold themselves steady. The more awakened you become, the more you must learn to be selective with your words. Silence in many situations is not withdrawal but mastery. Silence allows your experience to breathe. Silence allows your clarity to refine itself. Silence allows your inner knowing to grow roots. When you speak too often about your inner journey, you may feel momentarily relieved, but you also weaken the depth of the experience. Words are powerful tools, but they are not always necessary. Many profound transformations happen in the quiet spaces between thoughts, not in the explanations that follow. If you can sit with your experience without the need to articulate it, you will discover a strength that is far greater than expression. This does not mean you should avoid sharing forever. It simply means you must share with intention. You must share with awareness. You must share with a sense of responsibility. And when you share, let your words come from a place of clarity, not compulsion. Let them arise naturally, like a fragrance, not forcefully, like smoke. When the right person meets the right moment, even a few words can ignite transformation. But with the wrong person, even the most profound truth will fall flat. Awareness is knowing the difference. And if at any point you feel unsure, choose silence. Silence has never harmed anyone. Mischosen words have harmed many. Over time, as your inner journey stabilizes, you will begin to see that you do not need to hide nor display. You simply need to be. Your being itself becomes a teaching, your presence becomes an offering. Those who are ready will naturally find you. Those who are not will simply move on. You do not have to convince anyone, explain yourself to anyone, or justify your experience. The moment you stop trying to be understood, a tremendous freedom enters your life. And in that freedom, your awareness grows effortlessly. You may even notice that people begin to approach you differently. Some will come with humility, some will come with curiosity, a few will come with genuine longing. To those few, you may one day open the doors of your inner world, not because you need to, but because you recognize that your experience has matured enough to no longer be shaken by misunderstanding. If you have ever felt the urge to overshare, to seek validation for your spiritual insights, or to prove something to others, understand that this urge comes not from your awakened self, but from the part of you that is still seeking approval. The awakened dimension of you does not crave recognition. It is like the sky, vast, open, untouched by the clouds that pass through it. Clouds come and go, but the sky remains. When your inner world becomes as vast as the sky, people's opinions lose their power over you. Their reactions no longer define your expression. Their limitations no longer restrict your growth. And in this spaciousness, you discover that the most profound connections happen silently, not through explanations, but through presence. As you move through the world with this understanding, your life becomes a gentle invitation for others to explore their own depth, not through your words, but through the way you exist. And sometimes, if the situation is right, this deeper existence may naturally inspire them to reflect, perhaps even to comment or to join the conversation unfolding within themselves. When the invitation comes from presence instead of pressure, people respond with sincerity, not resistance. This is the quiet power of someone who has learned when to open and when to remain still. When this understanding becomes part of your way of being, you no longer feel the pressure to protect yourself from others, because your protection stops being a defense and becomes a natural expression of clarity. You choose when to speak, not out of fear, but out of alignment. You choose when to remain silent, not out of withdrawal, but out of wisdom. And this balance allows you to walk through the world with an inner grace that does not depend on anyone's recognition. Those who can resonate with you will feel it without explanation. Those who cannot will simply move on without causing disturbance. In this way, your life becomes effortless, not because the world has changed, but because you are no longer scattering your inner energy in places where it cannot bear fruit. The more you mature spiritually, the more you realize that your inner experience is not something to be spoken about. It is something to be lived. If you live it fully, those around you will sense it naturally. They may not understand it in words, but they will feel its presence. Sometimes this silent transmission is more powerful than any teaching you could articulate. When your presence becomes steady, people who are ready for depth will be drawn to you without you having to express anything. They will feel a certain ease in your company, a certain spaciousness that invites them to look inward. This is the true influence of an awakened being, an influence that arises not from expression, but from existence. If at any moment you feel uncertain about whether to open up or stay silent, simply return to your breath and notice the quality of your intention. If the intention comes from clarity, it will feel light, spacious, and effortless. If it comes from emotional restlessness or a need to be seen, it will feel heavy and contracted. In such moments, choose stillness. Stillness is not inaction, it is precision. It is the ability to let life speak through you without forcing anything. The deeper you go into this stillness, the more your perception sharpens. You begin to see who is ready and who is not, who is receptive and who is merely curious, who can walk with you and who can only watch from afar. This discernment is not something you calculate, it becomes instinctive, like the way a bird knows which wind will carry it. As this instinct grows, you may notice that you no longer need to resist those who misunderstand you. Misunderstanding loses its power when you stop needing to be understood. People will interpret you based on who they are, not based on who you are. And this simple recognition frees you from the unnecessary labor of explaining your inner world. Your path becomes lighter, your interactions become cleaner, your relationships become simpler. You begin to attract those whose presence supports your growth and gently distance yourself from those whose presence pulls you into old patterns. This is not an act of rejection. It is an act of alignment. If you look at the lives of those who have walked this path before you, masters, mystics, sages, you will see a common thread. They did not open their inner world to many. They did not speak of their experiences to everyone who asked. They lived with a deep awareness of the fragility of the inner process and the immense responsibility of guiding others. Their words were measured not by caution, but by compassion. They knew that truth, when offered to an unprepared mind, becomes a burden rather than liberation. And so they shared only when the conditions were right, when the listener had created enough space within themselves to receive without distorting. In this way, they protected both their own clarity and the seeker's potential. If your own journey is unfolding now, understand that you are in a delicate phase. Do not rush to expose what is still forming. Let it breathe, let it grow, let it become part of your very pulse. In time, your experience will find its own voice, and when it speaks, it will do so without hesitation, without insecurity, without the need for approval. Until then, hold your inner world as you would hold something sacred. Because it is sacred, not because it is superior, but because it is alive. It is shaping you, refining you, expanding you, and anything that has the power to transform your entire way of being must be treated with reverence. When you respect your inner experience in this way, you also inspire others to respect their own. Your silence becomes a gentle reminder that not everything needs to be spoken. Your rootedness becomes an invitation for others to look deeper within themselves. And sometimes, when the moment is right, this very recognition may encourage those around you to pause, reflect, or even share what awakening means in their own lives. In this way, your presence becomes a quiet catalyst for transformation. Not through explanation, but through authenticity. Ultimately, the reason spiritually awakened people should not open up to just anyone is simple. Your inner world is not a public space. It is a temple. And a temple is not entered by all. It is entered by those who come with awareness, humility, and a longing to grow. If you learn to open your inner doors only to those who are ready, your journey will unfold with far less friction and far more grace. And as your awareness becomes deeper and more stable, you will find that the world begins to understand you in ways it never did before. Not because you explained yourself, but because you became yourself fully. This is the quiet power of one who has awakened, the power to walk through life untouched by misunderstanding, unmoved by noise, anchored in clarity, and open only where openness leads to growth. If these words stir something within you, allow that stirring to deepen. Perhaps you may even reflect on whom you have opened your inner world to and whether they were ready to receive it. Such reflection is not an intellectual exercise. It is the beginning of inner responsibility. And from inner responsibility, true transformation becomes inevitable.